Hi Beauty Besties, welcome back to another YouTube video. If you're new here, my name is Cameron. I'm a licensed aesthetics instructor and the owner of Lash Queen Beauty Company in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm not going to spend too much chatting. Let's go ahead and jump right into this setup. So first off, I'm going to be using my brow palette. So this is actually a makeup mixing palette, but I like to use it for my brow services. Next, I have these hydrogel under eye pads. These are great if you're wanting to elevate the service a little bit. The two colors I'm going to be using on my client today are the Brooklyn Brown and Perfecto Brown by Brow Code. These are actually very good, very high pigmented brow dyes. Then I'm following through with my Blink Mapping Professional String, some brow lamination brushes. I actually prefer these over the mascara ones. I'll jump into more on that later. Next, I've got these two little sticks. These sticks are going to be what I use to clean up any excess dye that is outside of my lines. Next, I've got the two brushes. These are actually by Beauty Embrace. These are two magnificent brow brushes. I'm using her angled brush as well as the straight brush for concealing. Next, of course, I've got some pink medium-sized nitrile gloves, and everything that I have for my setup I'm going to link down below. These are 2x2 aesthetic wipes that I'll be using. And lastly, my whipped lash and brow cleanser by Lash Queen Beauty Co. Of course, this is a great cleanser for both the lashes and the brows. And then also this like scrub brush thing. I'll link these from Amazon. Pretty easy to find, but I'll link those below. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So starting off strong, I'm using the Gigi's Honey Wax. It is still hard in the middle because I just turned the pot on. With this kind of wax, it is a soft wax, and as you learn in esthetician school, soft wax is applied when it is applied to the skin as well as the hair. So you can only do one pass with the soft wax, but using soft wax is how I get my brow lines so crisp and clean. I know some people do threading. I'm not a huge fan of threading, but I do enjoy using soft wax for the brows, and I typically only use a small bead size amount like this. I love the consistency of this wax. I know it has some bad reputation due to, you know, some nail salons using it, but I love it. So let's go ahead and get into the tutorial. So I quickly realized upon editing that this might not have been the best client to do this tutorial on, because I really want to show you guys what the steps are to untamed eyebrows. This is one of my regular clients, so as you can see, her brows are already pretty tamed. Like off rip, you can see that the shape is already formed, and that's because she's a regular client of mine. But I'm still going to share this video because I already filmed it and I already recorded. So here we go. So first things first, you want to make sure you scrub the brows down. Okay, give them a really nice gentle scrub. I like to scrub the skin surrounding the brows as well as the brow hairs themselves. And what you're doing is really making sure that you remove any dirt, debris, oil, makeup, anything that could possibly be sitting in this brow line or the brow hairs that could disrupt the dye. Okay, because if you don't clean and do a very dense clean, what happens is the brow dye comes off patchy, and what you don't want is that. You don't want your client's skin to be flaking or the brow to be more intense and more faded in some areas. So to get a really clean, even tint and stain, I make sure I scrub those brow hairs absolutely clean with that scrub brush that is linked below from Amazon. I absolutely love it. It's rubber, and you can reuse them because you can obviously do your disinfection control measures, but scrub those brows clean and wipe them off with a 2x2. Next, once you wipe them clean, and as I was mentioning before, I'm using the Lash Queen Beauty Co. Whipped Cleanser. So that is an aloe vera whipped sensitive grade cleanser, so it's not irritating for the lashes or the brows. So you really want to use something like that because you're about to go in with wax, so you don't want to use any harsh chemically induced cleansers. Next, I'm just brushing the brows in the natural shape that they go in. I am going to be using this bristle brow lamination brush. I prefer these over mascara ones just because they are so much smaller that they can really get in between those hairs to direct them to where you want to go. This is how the mapping came out after I completed it. Let me show you the steps that I take to get to this map. I'm using the Blink Professional mapping string, and if you stay to the end, I have a very special gift for all of you that are watching. Just stay to the end for a very special surprise from Lash Queen Beauty Co. So this brow mapping string is very pigmented. I actually sometimes have to wipe it off just a little bit. And what we're looking for when you're doing the brow mapping, initially you're looking for the middle point of this person's face, and I usually use the bridge of their lip as well as their nose. And if you see in the video, some people struggle with mapping because they try to like kind of press the string down to where they want it to go. And instead, what I like to teach my students to do is kind of mark on the forehead where you want the string or where you want the lines to be, and then move the string upwards like you see me do in this video, so that you can actually mark the spot that you want on that weird area, like in between the nose and the forehead. That way you have that clear straight line instead of trying to like press your finger down on the string. But what you're looking for is for the middle brow or the middle point of that person's face, and then you're looking for the starting points for both brows. Now, some people pull out a caliper, and for clients, if it's their first appointment with me, I typically do pull out a caliper, and I will measure the distance between those two lines with that caliper, and I'll link that below as well, so that I know that these are, you know, mathematically correct. Now, brows are not going to be perfect, but you do want them to be, you know, sisters. You don't want them to be cousins. You really want them to be closer to sisters. Obviously, it's going to be really hard to get them to be twins because people have different brow structures, the way that their muscle sits on their face. It can just be hard to really get them to be exactly the same. So that's why we aim for sisters. But when you're brow mapping, you're looking for the middle points of the face. I also went ahead and marked two important parts on her arch, the start and the end of her arch. And then all I'm doing is connecting those lines. So I'm going in with my string and I'm just simply connecting those dots to where I put the original lines at. So that's all you see me doing right here, is just simply connecting the lines that I've initially created. What I love most about this mapping string is how precise it is. It definitely allows me to like go back in and really perfect the curve of the brow, as you can see me kind of do right here. I really take my time because mapping is the most important part of the brow service. If you ask me, making sure the map is perfect and that it makes sense for the client and her brow shape. And so usually I always show my client their map before I get to snipping and taking anything off. Especially my first time clients, I always show her what her brows are going to look like before I get to snipping, and this just gives them an idea of, okay, well, this is the shape of what she's going to be doing, because nobody likes to, you know, open their eyes and then see their brows skinnier or larger than they imagined. So I really recommend that you're transparent with your client and show her the map that you came up with before you get to waxing and snipping hairs off. Another thing I want to mention too is that brow mapping is a true skill. Please do not watch this video and think to yourself, oh, I can go immediately. And you might be able to. Don't take this the wrong way. You might be able to immediately go and get flawless brow shapes. But I have been in the business going on 6 years now. This is my 6th year as a lash and brow artist, and it has taken me some time to develop this skill and to be so precise and able to teach others. So I don't want you to watch this video and get discouraged. Watch this video and get encouraged. If anything, know that with time you can execute amazing brow looks. I just really wanted to put that disclaimer out there because I remember when I was a beginner lash and brow artist, that was one of my biggest things. Like, I was so bad about comparing myself to other people, not knowing that I'm comparing my day 1 to her day 150. So you really can't do that to yourself. This is the amount of wax that I typically use when I am waxing the brows, and I do use a small stick like this one, but you know, play around with the different styles of sticks. You might find that you like to use the bigger sticks. I was using bigger sticks for a while, and then I ran out and I only had these, and I was not about to take some out of inventory, so I went ahead and cracked these open and they worked just fine. With these sticks, you can only hold so much product, so I think they're perfect for brows. When you're applying soft wax, I would highly recommend, especially for brows, because like I said, we're so close. Like, you saw how close I got to getting into her eyebrow. I always start further back from where I am initially wanting the wax to land, because soft wax spreads, okay? So when you initially lay it down, it's going to be kind of thick, and you're going to want to spread it out so that it lays flat and even, so that you can get those really crisp, clean lines. And the reason that I start kind of further back, and I did do another angle of this so you can see it a lot better, the reason that I like to start further back on the brow is because this allows me to spread the wax closer into the eyebrow without getting too far into the shape. So start, when you drop the wax farther away from your lines, and then spread it closer to your lines. That'll allow you to get those really crisp, clean brow lines without seeping into the shape. And so in this close-up, you can see like I'm starting farther back on the brow bone so that I can spread the soft wax closer to her brow shape without it seeping into the brows. And this takes some practice, okay? But practice makes perfect. The more that you practice the skill, you'll get 10 times better at it. Practice by dropping the wax and spreading it. You want to get into that habit if you do intend to use soft wax for the brows. Again, I am using Gigi's all-purpose honey, so it has that honey-like texture, very easy to spread. I absolutely love this brow wax. I've been using it since I've started. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is how I get those really crisp, clean brow lines. So practice backing up away from the brow bone and pushing the wax further in so you can get those really crisp lines, because honestly, that's how I stay booked. You know, clients can get mediocre brows anywhere, but when they can get really crisp lines, they will become a long-term brow client. Next, I'm just brushing the brows into the direction of the normal hair growth, and I'm going to be going ahead and mix my brow dye. I am using the Brow Co Cream Oxidant. I prefer cream oxidant when I'm doing hand applied brows. Typically for like airbrush and things like that, you want to use a liquid oxidant, but when you're hand applying it like a dye, I would suggest using cream. And you don't even need a lot. You only need a pea-size amount of cream oxidant, and then sometimes I do equal parts, so 1 part Brooklyn Brown, 1 part Perfecto Brown, but for this client I do 2 parts Brooklyn Brown and 1 part Perfecto Brown.
In a second, if she a real one, then I'll protect it. Traded the AP, told my jeweler protect it. And it's all VVS and flower second. I might just hit it through, hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skin, love a melanin. Talk, pushing me to talk when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of the soup till I'm cinnamon. I had the Lambo, switch to the Rari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky, go retarded. I'm a Brooklyn nigga, I'm cold-hearted.
And then when you're ready to start dyeing the brows, I like to use the angled brow brush because the angle is already slanted in the way that a brow arch normally goes. So I typically use the angled brush to apply the dye, and you're looking at the brows kind of in quadrants or proportions. So I usually leave the front end of the brow last because that's where you want to get the lightest tint at, and the darker ends of the brows, you want those to be darker, and that's also typically where you're going to apply more dye. So you'll see me in the video kind of start middle range to the back. My first application is really just to create that really crisp line of dye. So as you can see here, my initial application, I'm just creating a really thin, and this is not a lot of product on this brush at all. I'm using just a thin amount of dye to create the sharpness of the brow at the very base, and then I'm going through and I'm just brushing the color so that it is going through the hairs.
In a second, if she a real one, then I'll protect it. Traded the AP, told my jeweler protect it. And it's all VVS and flower second. I might just hit it through, hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skin, love a melanin. Talk, pushing me to talk when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of the soup till I'm cinnamon. I had the Lambo, switch to the Rari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky, go retarded. I'm a Brooklyn nigga, I'm cold-hearted. might just hit it through. Hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skins, love a melanin. Talk, pushing me the tone when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of the soon till I'm sentiment. I had the Lambo, switch to the Ferrari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky, go retarded. I'm a fucking nigga, I'm cold-hearted. That's why I like the night, yeah, like freedom. Every time she see me, she wanna eat me. Hold on, I so like Justin Bieber, please believe me. I said, wow, I'm on the TV. I can't fuck with broke bitches, they be creepy. She be acting up, she always tryna leave me. But she a bad girl, and she freaky. I have her hanging up the ball like she mean me. I never hit a bitch more than once cause they be leeches. But her pussy girl, it tastes like peaches. But she can have it, I don't need it. I'd rather have my money green like kiwi. I don't talk to niggas cause they be capping. Disrespect me and see what happen. I don't make a cook war, start snapping. I'm gonna splash them. All I have smacked that I lacked them. He said what's that king? Nothing but my money. Remember my pockets flat, now they chunky. I ain't a pretty boy, but I ain't ugly. And I take it, bitch, in a second. If she a real one, then I protect it. Traded the AP, told my jeweler protect it.
Now, when I'm doing a ombre brow color application, I do like to go back and forth between each brow, just because I feel like my brow tint comes out much more evenly that way. Like one brow isn't darker than the other, and your goal is to get about 3 shades or three coats of the brow dye onto the hairs, and make sure you're brushing the dye throughout the brow. Okay, that's gonna make sure how you ensure to have a very even toned brow that is the dye is spread throughout the hairs. So as you can see, I'm gonna speed up the video just a little bit more because I'm pretty much repeating the same steps. I'm just making sure that this dye is in the lines of where I placed it at. I'm using my small stick to clean up outside of the lines if the dye is kind of spreading outside of the lines a little bit too much. And yeah, I'm just doing that back and forth between each eyebrow. So I'm gonna go ahead and speed it up now, but these are the steps. You're just working back and forth between each brow, applying dye, brushing the color through, start at the middle of the brow towards the back, and put more color and more dye towards the back of the brow.
Disrespect me and see what happen. I don't make a cook war, start snapping. I'm gonna splash them. All I have smacked that I lacked them. He said what's that king? Nothing but my money. Remember my pockets flat, now they chunky. I ain't a pretty boy, but I ain't ugly. And I take it, bitch, in a second. If she a real one, then I protect it. Traded the AP, told my jeweler protect it. And it's all BBS and flower second. I might just hit it through. Hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skins, love a melanin. Talk, pushing me the tone when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of the soon till I'm sentiment. I had the Lambo, switch to the Ferrari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky, go retarded. I'm a Brooklyn nigga, I'm cold-hearted.
Real quick, when you get to the front, you want to have as less product on the brush as possible. Typically what I do is dip the angled brush into the palette where the dye is, and then I will swipe both sides of the brush because you really don't want like a really dark front to your brow. That makes the brow, because the name of my service is ombre brow color, and if the front of the brow is dark, there's no ombre. You don't want the brow to be the same color throughout. You want it to get darker in stages. So the front is where I like to apply very light brow tint. I do about 2 passes here. Instead of 3 coats, you're getting about 2 coats in the front, and then I really work to make sure that the back of the brow is nice and dark and filled with plenty of dye. And towards the back of the brow, I kind of do swiping motions to mimic how the hair lays. But same steps as before, I apply the color and then I brush it throughout the brow hairs.
Remember Remember my pockets flat, now they chunky. I ain't a pretty boy, but I ain't ugly. And I take your bitch in a second. If she a real one, then I'll protect it. Traded the AP, told my jeweler protect it. And it's all BBS and flower second.
Same step as before with the waxing. I'm using a bead size of the Gigi's Honey, and I'm applying it to her inner. I'm lifting the skin. That's another tip if I didn't mention that before. You want to lift the skin when you're applying wax under the eyebrows. This will allow you to really lay the wax flat when you lift the skin so that you're not like applying it to an uneven surface. And then I'm just applying some muslin, rubbing that in. Remember, soft wax spreads, so remember my tip before, apply the wax farther back and spread it closer into the brows. But I typically do my waxing after I tint. The only time that I wax before I tint is when I am doing the tail of the brow, and that's just to ensure that, you know, I don't start tinting outside of the lines, because that was when I first started doing brows, that's what I would notice, is that the tint was making the brows. I really didn't have that much mapping skills there. The tint was truly creating the shape of the brows, and I was just waxing around it. And now with this method, I truly feel as though I have created a mathematical, you know, shape to their brows that makes sense for their face, and I'm not allowing the tint to be over dyed and to pretty much take over the surface.
Now they chunky. I ain't a pretty boy, but I ain't ugly. And I take your bitch in a second. If she a real one, then I'll protect it. Traded the AP, told my jeweler protect it. And it's all BBS and flower second. I might just hit it through, hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skins, love a melanin. Heart pushing me to tone when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of pursuit till I'm cinnamon. I had the Lambo, switch to the Ferrari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky. Retarded. I'm a Brooklyn nigga, I'm cold-hearted. I might just hit it through, hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skins, love a melanin. Heart pushing me to tone when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of the suit till I'm cinnamon. I had the Lambo, switch to the Ferrari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky, go retarded. I'm a Brooklyn nigga, I'm cold-hearted. That's why I like the back, yeah, like Riri. Every time she see me, she wanna eat me. I feel like Justin Bieber, please believe me. I said, wow, I'm on the TV. I can't fuck with broke bitches, they be creepy. She be acting up, she always tryna leave me. But she a bad girl, and she freaky. I have her hanging up the ball like she mean me. I never had a bitch more than once, cause they be leeches. But her pussy girl, it tastes like peaches. But she can have it, I don't need it. I'd rather have my money green like kiwi. I don't talk to niggas, cause they be capping. Disrespect me, and see what happen. I don't make a cook the war, start snapping. But it's blasting, all I have smacked, that I lapped them. He said what's that, kid? Nothing but my money. Remember my pockets flat, now they chunky. I ain't a pretty boy, but I ain't ugly. And I take your bitch in a second. If she a real one, then I'll protect it. Traded the AP, told my jeweler protect it. And it's all BBS and flower second. I might just hit it through, hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skins, love a melanin. Heart pushing me to tone when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of pursuit till I'm cinnamon. I had the Lambo, switch to the Ferrari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky, go retarded. I'm a Brooklyn nigga, I'm cold-hearted. I might just hit it through, hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skins, love a melanin. Heart pushing me to tone when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of pursuit till I'm cinnamon. I had the Lambo, switch to the Ferrari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky, go retarded. I'm a Brooklyn nigga, I'm cold-hearted. That's why I like the back, yeah, like Riri. Every time she see me, she wanna eat me. I feel like Justin Bieber, please believe me. I said, wow, I'm on the TV. I can't fuck with broke bitches, they be creepy. She be acting
Final steps are really going to be just getting the dye off of the brow hairs. So I'm using the same whipped cleanser. You can also use micellar water. I would also recommend maybe a Rue hair color remover. I'll be sure to link that down below and show you a picture of what that looks like. But it is a hair color remover, and what it does is it can tone down brows if they're too dark for your clients, because sometimes especially for first-time clients, they might get their brows dyed for the first time, and it might just be too much for them. So Rue is a good way for you to tone down the brows without having to completely like scrub them off. Essentially, Rue is like you can swipe it on there and take off color gradually. So I really like a product like that. But I'm just cleansing the brows. I would again recommend something gentle, because we did just do a wax and we used soft wax. So you want to use something that is gentle, foaming, nothing that's just too harsh on the skin. And then I am just moving that color around and toning the brows down, because she does like her brows a little softer, and I've just been wanting to really make my ombre brow color a lot softer and not so like, even though I have crisp lines, I don't want it to look too crisp, if that makes sense. So with the color, I've been really working on lightening it up and making sure it looks natural.
She always tryna leave me, but she a bad girl, and she freaky. I have her hanging up the ball like she mean me. I never hit a bitch more than once, cause they be leeches. But her pussy girl, it tastes like peaches, but she can have it, I don't need it. I'd rather have my money green like kiwi. I don't talk to niggas, cause they be capping. Disrespect me, and see what happen. I don't make a cook before I start snapping. But it's blasting, all I have smack, that I lapped him. He said what's that, kid? Nothing but my money. Remember my pockets flat, now they chunky. I ain't a pretty boy, but I ain't ugly. And I take your bitch in a second. If she a real one, then I protect it. Traded the AP, told my jeweler protect it. And it's all VVS and flower second. I might just hit it through, hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skins, love a melanin. Heart pushing me the tone when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of the food till I'm cinnamon. I had the Lambo, switch to the Rari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party. Pop a perky, no retarded. I'm a Brooklyn nigga, I'm cold-hearted. I might just hit it through, hold on, that's on my element. I like dark skins, love a melanin. Heart pushing me the tone when I'm stepping in. 30 bottles of the food till I'm cinnamon. I had the Lambo, switch to the Rari. I'm a gangster, but I like to party.
And final thoughts, I'm just putting some post wax oil on there to kind of calm her skin down. My clients love this, especially after that Gigi's honey, because remember I said that honey is a soft wax, so it pulls the skin as well as the hairs. So this is just a nice cool down for like a relief for the skin post brow wax. So I hope you guys like how these came out. I definitely wanted to do a softer brow look for her, so you can definitely check out my Instagram if you want to see more of like the darker looks that I do for brows. But these are very soft, natural, complements her face very well, and I hope you guys enjoy. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Now they chunky. I ain't a pretty boy, but I ain't ugly. And I take it